How many times a day do you actually sit down and take stock about how you feel? I've been doing a tremendous amount of research and reading and working with my clients on the importance of not only just thinking our way through life, but also feeling our way through life. And I came upon this because my wonderful and amazing psychologist has been trying to help me connect more with how I feel. And it's been a real struggle, I have to say. Now, interestingly, I've got this book. It's called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate and his son, Daniel Mate. And within about 30 different pages into this wonderful book, it describes what happens when there is a disconnect between our gut and our thinking brain. When you experience any kind of trauma at any point in time in your life, particularly in what he calls pre-verbal, when we're teeny tiny, right? When we don't really know what's going on. And trauma can be big T, small t, all different kinds. But when we experience that to a certain degree, we learn to say, you know what, our feelings, our emotions, our needs are not being met. And so it's best not to express them at all. And so we can start at a really young age to start taking those emotions and not just letting them go, we suppress them. And these emotions have nowhere to go. And so what happens is over time, as we get into adulthood, they build and they build and they build. And why this is so important is because if we don't understand the emotions, the feelings that drive our thoughts, that drive our actions, they are older than dirt in terms of evolutionarily speaking in our brain. Our thinking brain is way newer time wise than the amygdala, our limbic system, and other parts of our brain that are super old and have been operating for a really long time. It's our emotions that drive that fight, flight, freeze. So you can imagine if you have this turmoil of suppressed anger or anxiety or fear or trauma or just unexpressed emotions, and you face a situation in which there's severe anger that gets triggered or fear or anxiety or whatever, you won't be able to control what you say or what you do. And there's a lot of high performers that I work with that are just like, I'm okay. I'm doing great. I'm a high performer. Look at me. I can accomplish anything in any kind of a situation. And yes, that is how it manifests. It's manifests almost as a defiance. We are, as high performers, and I put myself in that bucket, as a person rather unable to express her emotions. I'm working on it, right? But it's tough for me because I look at some of these emotions and behind that wall. So in my mind, this giant ball of unexpressed emotion is behind a perfectly white wall. And I am terrified of getting behind that white wall because if I do, I'm afraid that what is going to wash over me, I'm not going to be able to handle. I've had several situations over the past couple of years in which I was absolutely sidelined by some very strong emotions. And I mean, like, couldn't work, couldn't concentrate. It affected absolutely everything. It affected my relationships. It affected the work, my clients, my ability to really show up, in my best way possible. I was trying to show up, but I knew I wasn't at my best. That's not cool. And it's also not effective. It's not kind to ourselves because what happens is and especially if something happened with someone else, could be our parents, it could be a sibling, it could be people in our community, it could be people wherever, right? We may not want to blame them. And it's not a matter of blaming in order to understand what kind of caused the emotional, turmoil or whatever that has been hanging out. But with the danger in not acknowledging where some of these emotions have come from, if it came from a specific experience, is that it turns into self-hatred. And so, with my clients, my wonderful, high performing, incredible clients that have pushed through so hard and they have thought their way through life. And I said thought, not fought with an F, THOUGHT, thought their way through life. They have pushed, they have defied the odds, and yet they do not feel. And again, the danger is if you are not It's not better at being in touch with your feelings. I have no idea what that means. You need to name them. I feel vulnerable. I feel judged. I feel rejected. I feel infuriated. I feel resentful. I am envious. I am upset, right? All these different words, as deep down, as granular as you can get. If you can connect this, with your feeling heart. I don't know where feelings come from, but let's go, let's go with that. Right? Your feelings actually come from here, but hey, everyone likes to say your feeling comes from your heart. What that connection will allow you to do is to be able to choose how you want to react in any situation. And any high performer will know that the loss of control is dangerous and terrifying. But repression is not control. And so I encourage you, if any of this was interesting, I really highly recommend this book, Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. Excellent read. Really, really helpful. But right now, today, where you are, just sit down and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? It could be about yourself, about the general environment, or just feelings in general. Can you name it? When I was asked to do that, I was like, yeah, I got nothing. I couldn't come up with a single word. I'm like, sad. I'm kind of weirded out by this whole process. And so over time, I'm sure I've shown you guys this before. There's tons of these online. They're called emotion or feeling wheels. You just kind of go around if you're not too sure what words to use, which most of us aren't. And it gives you some words to say, okay, yeah, that word's really popping out. I'm kind of annoyed. I'm really frustrated. I'm proud of myself because there's good feelings in here along with the bad. As you train your brain in tiny little pieces to identify and connect with how you're feeling and allow your brain to then start processing it, you have now created that connection. And in the future, when something happens, something big and something you don't want to mess up, you are going to be able to control how you react to it. You're going to say the right thing, you're going to do the right thing, and the world is going to continue to work with you as opposed to against you. Repressed emotions are dangerous and they can make you sick. And so, if there's anything I can ask of you guys right now, just check in with yourself. Do a quick check. How do I feel right now? Take a little hammer. If you've seen Shawshank Redemption, in my mind, I've got a kitten in one hand because I like kittens. They make me happy. And then I've got a little Shawshank Redemption little hammer in the other, and I'm going at this white wall, and I'm just chipping away, chip, 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 chip. Every time I go through and I do one of these, every time I read books like The Myth of Normal, and I sit and I think, have I made the connection between my thinking brain and my feeling heart, or the thinking brain, the feeling part of your brain? They're both in your head. But again, whichever one works for you, I don't care. Control your reactions, control how you feel, because that generates your thoughts. Thoughts that often enough turn into your belief system, and you can only act according to how you believe. So if you want to believe in yourself, because you don't right now, you have to go and say, what am I thinking? And then go one step further and say, how do I feel? And once you start making those connections, your world starts to become much more controlled, much more predictable, and much more something that you can handle.